Hello and welcome to the Sit Rep. It is May 2025 and I cannot believe it's 2 years since I started my little YouTube channel. Thank you very much to everybody who watches and subscribes, and I thought it might be quite fun on this anniversary to do an Ask Crusty. So I've thrown down the gauntlet for people to ask questions to me about my various projects, my take on wargaming, etc. So without further ado, let's have a look at some of the questions.
What would be your top tips for good solo gaming?
Well, I suppose that's an obvious question to somebody who's a solo wargamer and posts their games on YouTube. I don't know whether I've got any top tips per se. I mean, firstly, have some fun. I mean, that's what it's all about. What I do remember is many years ago, I was buying lots of miniatures and painting them, but actually not playing so much. I decided to start filming and putting on YouTube, having seen some other channels out there, which I thought were very, very interesting, very good. But what it made me do was actually play. Now, I haven't got a regular partner or go to a club, so the only other alternative was to do some solo gaming. I do occasionally play with my son, and he's very good for testing out some various games for various periods, etc. So that's good. But ultimately, most of my games are solo. The tips I have, apart from having fun, and also from that perspective, if you make a mistake, it doesn't really matter. Who cares? Even to the extent of perhaps making one side or being biased towards one side potentially one time. It's all about having fun and getting that experience of the game. I don't use AI, or obviously not a computer literate person necessarily, but I don't have a sort of automatic or artificial intelligence running any opposition sides for the enemy. Could you roll some dice to decide what somebody does? Potentially, but ultimately I just try to play each side alternatively as as the game is, whether it's card driven or I go you go. I just play either side as realistically as I can from the perspective of getting a good game. What I would say with that is that I don't try and push too many games in that I don't like to see suicide missions and the like. I think that is stupid. So if you're a fan of my channel, you'll see that I do a lot of campaign scenarios or games that link into a campaign, and there was always an eye on how is that going to affect the future battles or meetings of those sides. So like I say, it's no suicide missions, and it's preservation of the force to continue in another battle or part of the area of operations. So I think that's about it with regards to solo gaming. Have fun. Don't be too serious about the tactics or the mistakes and stuff like that. And indeed, if you do make a mistake, you can always go back and correct it. No biggie. And always have an eye on the campaign and the realism from that perspective, rather than the suicide mission and do or die.
Love the naming conventions. Where do you take your inspiration from?
Ah, yes, the funny names. Well, it's quite simple, really. Two Fat Lardies are very good at this sort of thing, and I'm a fairly recent gamer in that. Although I've done it for a long time, I've had large periods of time where I haven't done anything. When I got back into wargaming seriously about 7 years ago or so, didn't really know where I was going, and started dabbling all over the place and buying various rules and figures and stuff like that. But anyway, stumbled across Two Fat Lardies, I don't know quite how, and had a right laugh listening and watching some of their videos, and seeing some of their naming conventions of people, which is always a bit of sort of double entendre type stuff. And I guess I've just taken that to extreme. My puerile mind loves making up the little names for various commanders, leaders, whatever they may be. And it's as simple as that, really. Putting the fun into wargaming, and okay, some people may not like it, but I certainly do. And I think by some of the comments that I see on the videos, other people enjoy it as well. So there we go. The only thing that will stop me doing that is me running out of ideas. But at the moment, we're going okay.
What's an aspect of wargaming you don't like?
Well, I think wargaming is an absolutely fascinating hobby. I try to tell my civvy mates, as I still call them, ex-military, you never quite drop that nomenclature. I tried telling them that it's a multifaceted hobby in that it's research, reading the history about it, it's doing the research on what figures to buy, what rules to buy, you buy it, you paint them, you base them, sort them out for the armies, you've got to work out what you've got to get, then you finally get them on the table with the rules and play a game, and in my uh, uh, circumstance also film it and then edit it and put it on the YouTube and stuff like that. So there are so many aspects to wargaming to like, and of course we've got all the various periods, the scales, both in the size of the miniatures and the size of the battles themselves, the campaigns, whatever they may be. But what's not to like about any of that? I think I only really have some two minor ones. One really isn't a dislike per se, and that is the first one is battles, one-off battles. I do play some of them. Mainly they're historical, not all. But the one-off battle that has no meaning, no sort of follow-on, I think is a bit of a well, so what? Fine. We can all do that and have a bit of fun, get the figures on the table, have a battle, have a laugh, and that's it. But I do like some consequence for that, and hence, as I've said previously, I do like campaigning because it has an impact on what's happening next. So you can't have the suicide mission because the next battle you're not going to be there and they can win the whole campaign. But that's a minor one, really. Horses for courses. Like I say, I do like the historical games as well for the one-off battles, the what-ifs, and so forth. But all of that said, I don't get people, say on a 6x4 table, whatever size table, doesn't really matter, lining all their troops out on one side, right to the table edge on the left and the table edge on the right, facing an army the opposite side of the table, doing exactly the same. There's no room for manoeuvre. And all they do is advance towards each other. And if it's a sort of ancients game, they'll have a melee. If it's not, then they'll fire from a distance or whatever. I mean, good grief. I've been to not that many wargaming shows over the years, but enough to see some of those games on show. And I just think, well, what's exciting about that? Yes, they look spectacular. There's loads of figures on the table. Brilliant. But as a war game, I think it's just missing the point. You've got to have room to manoeuvre. You've got to have the ability to do some flanking, envelopment, or whatever, I don't know, using the ground rather than just marching straight forward, having a battle, and then a roll of the dice, which frankly to me is quite boring. So if anything, that would be my one dislike in wargaming from that perspective.
Great to see smaller scales on the table, not 28mm. What is your primary drive to use smaller scales?
Well, I actually have some 28mm figures, and I think they were some of the first figures that I bought when I got back into wargaming after a long period of absence. You haven't seen them on the YouTube, and whether you will in the future, I'm not quite sure. I don't know about that, but they're not mass armies. They're just sort of skirmish, pulpy type games and that sort of thing. But why do I use smaller scales? Well, it's funny actually. When I started looking at what sort of wargaming figures to buy when I was getting back into it, and I have to say that the rules had changed dramatically from when I was doing it before. I mean, I'm a sort of Bruce Quarry's campaigns in miniature, Napoleon's campaigns in miniature, and WRG version 5 or whatever it was at the time, and then a bit of DBA before I went off into the wilderness for many, many years and coming back into it. And games had changed beyond all recognition. And so the prices of figures, to be honest, and I couldn't afford, nor did I have the space. And that's, I think, one of the key things for large armies, as in figure size miniatures. I also didn't really like the look of, the classic sort of 12-man battalions or whatever it may be with the larger figures. And I wanted something a little bit more realistic. I also, and I think I've mentioned this before, or if not, I'll mention it in the future, depends how I edit this, like some maneuver space on my battlefield. And of course, if you're filling it up with large figures, you don't necessarily get that. So smaller scales, well, smaller scales allow you to do lots of different things. You can have a huge army and cause, whatever it may be, or a huge geographical area. But it's not just that, it's actually being able to fit it on the table, it's being able to store it. I do remember looking at various figure scales, having bought some 28 mils, which I knew were too big at the time. And it took me a long time to find 15 mil. And when I finally did, I tried 6, I tried 10, and tried even tried some test paints and stuff, and basing. And then I found 15, 18 and stuff, or whatever. And I suddenly thought, eureka! Not the manufacturers, although I do have some of those. What a fantastic scale. Just big enough for me to paint with my pretty poor painting technique, but cheap enough, and you get enough of them, they look reasonably good when there is a little gang for a, I don't know, a platoon or a company, battalion, whatever it may be. And for my larger skirmish games, that's what I've gone for, the 15 mil. I think it's a great scale. That said, again, if you're watching my channel more recently, you'll have seen me dive down into the 6 mil. I've got some 3 mil and indeed 2 mil, and they all have their place. I think there's some other questions about scales, so perhaps I'll leave it there and we'll talk about that in some greater detail. But ultimately, the primary drive is cost, storage, and battlefield maneuver space, which I think a lot of wargamers miss out on sometimes. Yeah.
And linked to that last question, what scale of miniatures do you use in your games? Which is your favourite?
So yes, what scale of miniatures do I use in my games? Well, I've got 2 mil, that's for Napoleonics. I've got 3 mil, that's my Alexander and Persians, my Macedonians and Persians. I've got 6 mil, which is mainly Napoleonics, and I'm running a campaign in that at the moment in Poland. I have 10 mil. Now, nobody's seen that one, and I'll keep that one to one side for the moment. I've got 15 mil, and like I said before, I've got some 28 mil. What is my favourite? That is difficult to answer because they all play their own part in whatever I'm trying to do. I think for spectacle, it has to be my Napoleonic 6mm. When I've got them all on the table, I think, even, again, my painting's not brilliant, but it's not designed to be brilliant at 3 feet. But the spectacle of having so many troops, that scale, in the various battalions, brigades, and divisions, etc., does look pretty good, even though I say so myself. So I think, 6 mil would be my favourite scale, but it depends what you're doing.
And again, do you have any plans to expand into new scales for any new projects?
New scales, well, I think I've covered most of them. From the miniatures perspective, as in figures, I will not be doing 20 mil, and I think I've covered most of the other scales. There's the epic scale, not bothered with that, to be honest. I'll stick with 10s and 15s. However, if I'm going into other areas from the perspective of naval games, then there might be some 1/600 scale ones knocking around in the not too distant future. So keep your eyes peeled on that. The rest of it, I think really what you've got to work out is, do you want to buy another load of terrain to go with a particular scale? No, thank you, because it all adds up. Now, I've got 15 mil scale World War II, 10 mil scale World War II, 6 mil scale Dark Ages, 15 mil Dark Ages, the list goes on. How many different scales do you need at a particular period? Well, that's an unanswerable question, obviously. So I think at the moment, from the miniatures figures perspective, no, I'll be sticking with the scales I've got. I might get more of them, obviously, but from the naval side, I might be looking at some 1/600 stuff. Keep your eyes peeled for that.
What made you decide to wargame the periods and genres that you do?
Well, of course, the periods and genres that I play are very selfishly, obviously, linked to what I like. I've always had a penchant for Dark Ages, and that's what kicked off the channel, really, with Dux Britannia. I mean, it's a fantastic, fascinating period of history for me. From the perspective of wargaming, I suppose it's relatively tame. Not a lot happens, and it's pretty much the same over, I don't know, 400-500 year period potentially. But I'm thoroughly interested in all of that Dark Ages stuff. It took me a long time to get into Napoleonics, and I always said I wouldn't do it. And the same with World War II. But I think as you get into the hobby a little bit more, you get to know a little bit more about the various rules, the games, the periods, the history, whatever it may be, and you just seep into it, obviously. So it's all down to personal preference. I mean, I don't like, for example, biblical ancients, and I'll probably never play that. I had a dabble in the Macedonian Persians 3 mil stuff. I quite enjoy that. Good fun with old Alexander and the successors, which I've done one battle of, and there'll be more to follow in the future. But I probably won't go much more into that. But I do like the Romans against the Germans, and indeed against the ancient Britons, which will be coming up in a few months' time. So really, it's all about my particular bent for that period in history. I mean, I will not be doing something like the 7 Years' War. Not interested. What else am I not interested in? Oh, crikey, what can I pick out now? I probably can't pick out anything off the top of my head from that perspective, but I keep ticking along, and as you'll see, I did that planner at the beginning of the year as to where I wanted to go, and undoubtedly, I mean, I've got another 5 years of gaming before I start to go doolally. I'm sure I'll be banging in a few more periods over that time and whatever's. I do like reading about the history before we even get into it, though. So if the history doesn't grab me in the first instance, then I won't be going there. Just remembered one that I have no interest in doing whatsoever. I know some people are, and that's the old samurai type stuff, Japanese stuff. Not interested, but you never know, in a few years' time. Something might flick my switch that way, but at the moment, no.
Again, similar to a previous question, are there any others we can expect in the pipeline and you would like to get into?
Well, what's in the pipeline? You may have seen in my New Year's Res Rep what I was planning to do for the rest of the year. I've got Hastings campaign, got to paint the miniatures for that. Whether that happens this year or not, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I've got my Severus Dickus in Britannia. So that is, I suppose it's not necessarily a different genre per se or period, but it's an extension of what I was doing with the Romans. But if you've been keeping your eyes peeled, there may have been a bit of a hint in this video as to what I'm going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. And that is certainly new for me. New scale, a new period. And that may lead into something else, but that's probably a fair few months, if not next year's time off. What else? I mean, I've got Zona Alpha coming up. I have highlighted that and advertised that one. Looking forward to getting that on the table. Sort of futuristic silver bayonet type thing. I do love my silver bayonet as well. I think there's a question about that coming up shortly. So yeah, I can't really think of anything at the moment that is burning. Although that said, not to see a period or genre, but I have done my 2 mil desert warfare with the North Africa stuff with Rommel. I may look to do that on the Eastern Front, Germans and Russians. So we shall see. But again, that ain't going to happen anytime soon.
Why does Russia feature so much in your videos?
Yeah, Russia. Well, it's a fascinating country and has been for hundreds of years. I think it's just got such a rich history. There's the Tsar aspects. Prior to that, you got Ivan the Terrible, and then you've got the communist era, and huge armies getting involved. I really like the look of the Russo-Turkish War, for example. Whether I can find out enough information about it to make it worthwhile for putting on the table to make a spectacle, I don't know. I've got Russia in the Second World War at platoon level. I've got it at battalion level. I've got it in Renaissance level or period, should I say, 15 mil. You haven't seen that. You may see that in the future. with Poles and Lithuanians and Turks, or Ottomans rather. And of course got my Napoleonics, got that in 2mm, got it in 6mm, got it in 15mm. Good grief, the list goes on, doesn't it? I just find Russia absolutely fascinating. I also like to do periods, or not say periods, but like to do parts of periods which are perhaps not so popular as others. So let's take the Napoleonics as an example. I mean, everybody does Waterloo and the sort of 100-day campaign. I mean, yeah, okay, it's good, it's interesting, but let's have a look at something different, for example, for a change. And also, for example, the Normandy landings, Market Garden, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, great, but it's hammered to death, to my mind. How many times do we see the invasion of Russia 1812? Or indeed, as I'm doing, the 1806-1807 campaign into Prussia, Poland, and coming up to Russia. Not very often, so that's what drives me to do those sorts of things, because there's so much to learn about all of those conflicts, which I don't think are very well known, and it's fascinating. So yeah, bit of a Russia file in a way from that perspective. Don't actually like what they're doing at the moment, but that's another story.
Will you be doing any more fantasy or sci-fi stuff in the future?
Well, yes, here we go. Any more sci-fi and fantasy? Well, fantasy, Silver Bayonet. So I am preparing for my Egypt campaign with Baron Igor Jerkov and the gang. Need to paint up a fair few figures for that, and a bit of scenery and the like. But definitely doing that. I've got a pre-order in for the Albion version of Silver Bayonet, the campaign for that, and I have the Italy supplement as well. And no doubt I'll be doing my own scenarios for that one, a little campaign. So yeah, do enjoy a bit of Silver Bayonet. Sci-fi stuff. Well, there's a thing. Already mentioned Zona Alpha, which is sort of near future. I do actually have Stargrave, and that is some of my 28mm figures. I wasn't overly keen on the rules. I may go and revisit them at some stage. Have a look at that. And what other fantasy, not fantasy, what other future stuff have I got? I have actually got Billion Suns. I got some brigade models, all various starships and spaceships and stuff like that. Again, haven't really played that one properly, but I got a couple of fleets, not entirely painted up, but yeah, might get into that at some stage as well. But generally not a lot, although when I was looking at getting stuff for Zona Alpha Alternative Armies, where I've got a fair few of my figures, I did see they've got a great little range of the old Judge Dredd gang. So I do like Judge Dredd, so that might be quite fun getting into that. But hey, any of that is not going to happen anytime soon, he says again.
If you had to limit yourself to one century forevermore, which would you choose?
Yeah, I think it has to be the 20th century, really, because it gives you a lot of scope for so many different conflicts. The nearest one to that has to be the 19th. You've got Napoleonics, obviously, and then you've got Crimea. I'd like to do a bit of that. American Civil War, may do some of that in the future, colonial battles and the like. But it's all, without being hung, drawn, and quartered by the various historians, fairly similar types of conflicts. But realistically, 20th century, when you get into that, Russo-Japanese War, First World War, Second World War, then a bit of modern Africa, and then we can bang on the back end of that sort of, apocalyptic near future Chernobyl disaster a la Zona Alpha, and you've got a fantastic scope of various different conflicts and scenarios going on there. If you go back to Dark Ages, I mean, you've got a whole raft of 400 years, 400 years, which is actually virtually the same types of battles. It's not overly interesting per se. I do like it, but that's pretty limiting if you're going to stay with that century around about, say, the 6th, 7th century AD. So, yeah, I think I'd have to go for 20th century with that one.
You've been playing your Napoleonic campaign using GDA2 rules. How did you decide on them? Have you used other rule sets, and how does GDA2 compare to them?
Well, quite simply, I saw them advertised, saw the YouTube clips on the Two Fat Lardies channel, and thought I'd give them a go. Um, yeah, I mean, I bought them a fair while before I bought the figures, and I wasn't quite sure I was actually going to get on with them. I think for the scale of the campaign and the game that I'm doing, they suit very well. They are a little bit finicky, and it does take a while to learn how to play them. And if you watch my videos, I'm sure I do pick up a few errors myself, but there's plenty more there. But ultimately, it's a method of getting the battle or the campaign running. So I'm reasonably happy with the rules. How do they compare to others? Well, I use sharp practice, but that's obviously for a smaller scale, sort of large skirmish. They work extremely well for that, good fun. And then I also use 2x2, which are the freebie ones by Rod Humble. Just pick them up off the internet. And they're good for larger scale, and I use my 2mm figures for that, core / army scale games. So it really depends what you want to do. I think what's missing from my perspective is something kind of in between army level, core, and GDA. So I have picked up a copy of Big Bloody Battles. I haven't got the Napoleonic supplement. I don't think I need that. I can just work around the basic rules. And I'll be looking to do some larger scale games using my 6mm figures with that set of rules. So I'm looking forward to that. So keep your eyes peeled, because that one's coming up on an anniversary not that far away. But I don't think I want to expand too much into other Napoleonic rules, because I just haven't got the bandwidth to absorb all the information at various different rules. I'll stick with those ones that I've mentioned, I think.
How do you manage to find time to put together your videos, in addition to the time required for all the rest of the hobby, like painting, research, terrain, finding silly hats, and outrageous French accents?
Wow, yes. Can you believe it? It's a very time-consuming hobby, isn't it? As I mentioned before, we do all our research with our reading. We watch videos. We scour the websites for all the figures we're going to buy, the rule sets we're going to buy, and we get it, we paint it, and it takes up an inordinate amount of time. Then we've got to get the terrain, and then we've got to get the cloth for the table, all this sort of stuff. We've got to plan the games, got to plan a campaign, all these sorts of things. And it does take up a massive amount of time. Where do we find all that time? I don't know. What I would say I think has helped this year so far, coming up halfway to it, I guess, is I did my planner. And although I'm straying from that with various little side projects, some of the big chunks are being hit, the milestones are being hit as I go through the year. I don't want to be too anal about that, of course, because it's all about having fun and enjoying my gaming. But I think it is quite useful handrail to take me through the year, so I can plan how I'm going to do my painting, for example. And that's not just the figures, as I've just mentioned there, it's the terrain as well. So I'll be looking to do several stickers in Britannia around about sort of November, December time. Well, I haven't got the Britons painted yet, so I've got to backtrack from there and work out when that's got to be done. I guess I need 50 or 60 figures painting up. That won't take too long per se, but it's got to be done nevertheless. My other big project will be the Hastings 6mm one. I've got my Anglo-Saxons and I've got my Vikings, but I need to do the Normans. Now I've got all the figures and I've had them in my drawer for God knows how long, but that's a considerable undertaking to paint them up. So I've probably got to start painting them next month, really, or start painting them next month to get them ready for September, October time. I suppose, in a normal day, I do get up quite early, so I'll come up to my airy and start dibble-dabbling away painting. I do painting first thing because it's a nice quiet time and I can crack on and do that with any interruptions. During the day, I'll just come back up here and do 15-20 minutes here and there and I'll do some editing, obviously, as required. Most of my filming I'll do in the evenings. So this is an evening now, and I'm doing this. Longhead Decoys is downstairs watching telly. I don't actually watch a lot of telly, which allows me to do my hobby, because I am living it, I am breathing it, I am dreaming it. Every spare moment, apart from taking the dog out for a walk and doing the other domestics, is pretty much down to wargaming. But it's, you know, we love this hobby. It's why we do it, isn't it? It's all good fun at the end of the day. That said, I do find painting a bit of a chore at times, and I have got to make myself do it. If I'm sat up here twiddling my thumbs thinking, oh, or planning something various or whatever, I think, no, knuckle down and paint a few figures lofty. My pile of shame is sitting about 3 foot over to my right, and I'm not going to show it on camera because it is frankly a disgrace. There are half-ended projects all over there, and it's a bit embarrassing, to be honest. So I ain't going to see that. I suppose I'll work my way through some of it at some stage. I'm sure, you know, all of that said, it sounds like I'm fairly organised. I'm not. I've got my horrible lead pile. I've got some projects that are in the drawer or under the table that just have been bought in a fit of excitement, and they got half painted and then stowed away again. Will they see the light of day? I don't know, but that certainly doesn't demonstrate that I particularly managed my time well. I've gone a little bit, oh, squirrel, away we go, and we'll do something else. And that is something I am particularly bad at. Like I say, what ties me down is that yearly planner, which is pretty good. But that's not the day-to-day type stuff. And at the moment, for example, I'm bouncing around between working out my filming for Bongo. Fortunately, most of the painting's done for that. Doing some Zona Alpha stuff. I've got my Dux Britanniarum Yakidar campaign ongoing. I've got my Napoleonic campaign in Poland. I need to bang out a couple of videos for that. And you know, before you know it, that's well, a fair few hours of both playing, filming, and editing already taken out of my hectic schedule before I can get down onto the workbench to paint a few figures. So yes, it is quite tricky. It is time consuming, and I'm always seem to be doing something. And to be honest, there will always be something to do, because I can always crack on with a project that's been stuffed away in a drawer for God knows how long. So I don't think I necessarily do manage my time particularly well, but I have some fun doing it. And as opposed to, and when we're talking about silly hats and silly accents, well, it's all part of the fun, isn't it?